In this video, we're talking about how to persuade more prospects and close more deals without ever having to feel like a slimy salesperson. Time to think like an investor. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Josh. I am a 7th year financial advisor and I run my own independent wealth management practice. Now, throughout my history as an advisor, it's been tricky because our jobs as financial advisors is like a delicate balance. On one hand, we need to deliver so much value in excess of the cost that our clients are thrilled to work with us. We need to be very effective advisors and coaches and we need to deliver results. But on the other hand, we literally can't do that unless we know how to effectively sell a client in the first place. And if we don't get that balance right, it can kind of hurt our reputation. So how do we get more of our ideal prospects to sign on with us without having to feel disingenuous or pretending to be something we're not? Well, I'm with a group of buddies at Mall of America in Minnesota because we're going to a Vikings game, but we stopped in and all my buddies go into a store and my phone dies. And so now I'm standing outside of this massive store. I have no idea where they are and I can't really leave because if I don't find them, I don't know how I'm gonna get back. And so I find that I'm actually standing right beside one of those kiosks with, those high pressure salespeople who have some kind of weird skin product or whatever it is. That day, it happened to be these gel chemical heating pads that were apparently the greatest thing since sliced bread. I was stuck, I had nowhere to go, and I see the poor girl coming up to approach me because it's her job to sell me on this. So she essentially walks up to me and pulls me into the sales process, and me, being in an industry where I'm kind of on the other side of the sales process a lot of the time, I kind of get hyper aware on the quality of the person trying to sell me. And this one, I almost just felt bad for her. You could taste the lack of sales ability on this poor young woman. First out, she starts by trying to explain every little chemical that goes into this heating pad and how it's made and how it doesn't burn your skin, but it's the perfect thing for refreezing and reheating. And she's talking about all of the different types of latex on the outside and they're not allergens. And she goes into this big diatribe about how it's great for somebody who works at the office, or it's great when you're like watching Netflix at home and you just want to throw it on while you're watching a show. She was talking about how it was amazing for neck pain, and she was making all of these assumptions about me, maybe based on her life or her experience, and she was essentially trying to sell me a list of things that just really didn't matter to me whatsoever. And now this whole time I'm just squirming and I feel bad for her because I know I'm not gonna buy this thing, and I'm just sitting there like cringing and just waiting for my buddies to pop out of the store so I can get out of there with them and have an excuse to leave. Now, I think this is a really good example of a point I wanna make, which is if you're aware you're in somebody's sales process, that means by definition, it is not really good sales. In a truly great sales process with a good salesperson, neither party will actually feel like there's any sale happening. And if you're consciously aware that there's a sale happening, it means you're dealing with a bad salesperson or sales process. But the main problem is I've seen this over and over, and I can only imagine it happens way more often than I'm seeing because most financial advisors don't actually have any previous sales experience. And the problem is we're selling all the time. Whether it's selling a new prospect or client on why we're the best person to work with their unique problem, or whether we have an existing client and we're just trying to get our recommendation across. We have a very high value piece of advice for somebody that if implemented would be huge for them. We have to communicate those ideas effectively in a way where somebody wants to sign up for them, or else we're never gonna be able to deliver that value at all. And so the question becomes, how do we deliver more value and land more perfect fit clients without feeling slimy or desperate? I think one of the most important things first is just dealing with that limiting belief. I mean, think about it. If you have some deep, unhealthy belief that sleeping with somebody's wrong, it's probably not gonna go that well for you. Trust me. You see, a big problem is that we tend to see sales in a negative or perverse light because somewhere in some Hollywood movie or in some story, it led us to conflate sales and manipulation.
Cutting-edge, high-tech firm out of the Midwest awaiting imminent patent approval.
Sales is about empowering somebody to make a productive decision for themselves. Sales is about making the case and telling the best story for how making a decision can help improve someone's life net of any cost. Now that's a far cry from manipulation, which is like attempting to sway someone's emotion or psyche into making a decision that is right for you and not necessarily right for them. And you see, now I feel like we're actually starting to put our finger on the real problem. For me, in my experience, sales always felt weird, it felt awkward, it felt wrong and disingenuous because I had my dynamic backwards. I was thinking about it as some adversarial competition, who gets to win, versus thinking it through the lens of love. And now that sounds crazy, but let me explain. You know, Jordan Peterson defines love as the best in me helping the best in you. And I really like that definition. It means all of my best character traits and my best strengths and my best skills working in good faith to help the best in future you. Now that doesn't necessarily mean giving you what you want, right? It doesn't necessarily mean giving you all the goodies and not having any cost. Sometimes it means having tough love, and that's the part of the sales process that gets contentious. What I'm getting at here is over time, I've started to view sales as something more akin to therapy than akin to manipulation. Have you ever seen these job interview questions where they ask you to like sell you a pen? They say, hey, sell me this pen. And what happens to most people is they take the pen and they go, yeah, this is a big pen. I mean, it's got a nice cap, and they immediately fail. What they are looking for when they ask you to sell the pen is they're trying to determine if you start asking research and probing questions before you start talking about the product. I often tell other new advisors who are asking about sales, I tell them that mastering sales is like learning to solve a math problem upside down. Let's say you and I are at a table together and we're on opposite ends. You know, solving a problem upside down means not only am I working through the problem, but I'm working through the problem to display it in a way that makes sense from your point of view of the table. Think about this. This is such a cool art. It's such a cool skill to be able to both come up with a solution, but to write it upside down in a way that it makes more sense to somebody else's point of view. And if you've ever tried writing upside down, it's actually unbelievably difficult at first. It looks so bad, but if you practice over and over and over again, you can get to the point where you can do a math problem upside down almost as well as you can do it right side up. And for me, that's been my favorite way to explain sales to new advisors is you're trying to think about the best way to help somebody, not through your point of view, but having done enough research and probing to figure out how to present it in their point of view. If we think about the girl that was trying to sell me the heating pads and it was so cringy, it's because if she had asked a single question about me, she would know that I don't watch Netflix at all. I work from home and I don't have a cubicle to put this thing in, and I have bad back pain, and the number one reason I'm upset about it is because it inhibits my ability to golf. That is incredible information that she could have leveraged to sell me a product that could solve the problem of my back pain because I want to be better at golf. And so it's been my experience that both people in a sales process, both the person selling and the person buying, are keenly aware, at least subconsciously, if the process is happening in good faith and if it's happening through love. So I'd like to talk about the single best way I've found to make it known that this is the best in me trying to help the best in my prospect. And to me, that has been asking incredible questions. What is the difference between just a question and an incredible question? Well, an incredible question is any question that breaks down the walls to a genuine answer within the structure of the question. Now that's obviously gonna need an example because it's a mouthful. A lot of new advisors trying to determine what exactly their prospect wants, trying to get a better glimpse of what that little heaven is that they're working towards that they can help with. They might say something along the lines of, well, what are your long-term objectives? And the client goes, I don't know, retire, put my kid through school. Like all the templated answers you'd give to a financial advisor, right? And it's because the advisor asked a question, not really an incredible question. Now, an incredible question, on the other hand, might go something like, listen, if you could spend 3 times the amount of money in any given area, guilt-free, what would you spend it on? And so there's a big difference between that and what are your long-term objectives, right? By giving the client a hypothetical, if you could spend 3 times guilt-free, you add in these little pieces that allow the client to remove that realism filter that they have to pass all of their answer through. Instead of asking something basic like, what's unideal about your current situation? What's your challenges? You might ask something like, if you had a magic wand and you could change any single thing about your finances, what would you wave it over and just change overnight? You see, the client, as they're talking to you, is kind of filtering out all of their answers to make sure what they're saying makes sense socially between you and them. It essentially puts up this barrier of hyper-realism in between you and the client that prevents them from thinking about things aspirationally or really diving into the things that really aren't okay. An advisor asking regular questions might ask something like, what do you want your life to look like in 10 to 20 years? As a retirement kind of question, and the client will go, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm retired on a beach. It's just like the classic bullshit answer. In that case, I might ask something like, who has your dream job? Because the question, who has your dream job, infers that there's a way to work and be productive in the world and still enjoy your life in a way that it feels like you're retired. A much more healthy way to approach maybe your later years, as opposed to thinking, oh, I want to be on a beach drinking margaritas. And so as I started to ask these incredible questions over time and develop them, what I started to find is that sales meetings became a lot less tense, and they became a lot more of like an open discussion you'd have with like a really good friend that you hadn't seen in a while. And so having gone through incredible questions that might take you a really long time to hone and kind of get them right and find where to put them in the conversation, you actually get to the bottom of what's going on. Now that you have great information, the rest of the sale essentially becomes the story of the best way that you can help solve that particular problem, that gap between where they are and where they want to be. And by the way, if you don't believe that you can solve it or that you're the best to solve it, the sale can stop there, period, full stop. Like, it doesn't have to continue. It's not as if you have to find some roundabout way to close them and to make money. If the person isn't the right fit, you don't sell them. That is a major piece of stress-free, slime-free sales, is that we're okay seeing prospects that aren't a good fit for us not sign on. Now that you've put yourself in the client's shoes and you've had a real genuine discussion about the state of things, your main job is to repeat and articulate the client's problems back to them clearer, more cohesively, and more concisely than they could themselves. Okay, Sally, so what I hear you saying is that you really just want to stop beating yourself up because you're the last one of your friends to move out of your parents' house and you feel like you're not even close to where you need to be to make a down payment. Do I have that right? And if you've honed your skills and you've done your job and you've listened well, 80% of the time, 90% of the time, Sally's gonna go, yes, thank God. Finally, somebody's listening to me and putting themselves in my shoes. This is such a cool thing about sales. Where else in the world are you incentivized to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and try to find out where someone's coming from? In the sales process, it's the only thing in life I know of where we have a financial incentive to really understand somebody without letting our own ego and our own thoughts get in the way. Because in the sales game, all you have to do is really put yourself in someone's shoes and really understand it, and the scoreboard takes care of itself. You know that feeling when someone says something really profound and hits you, or like you hear a quote and it just like cuts through? That feeling is sparked by the cohesive expression of something that you've always thought but you hadn't yet articulated. And I guess if you thought that was profound, that kind of proves that point. If we can articulate the prospect's problem back to them better than they can themselves, they're going to immediately assume that we are also better at articulating the solution. There's something that someone else has said, which is a cohesive expression of something they knew and they felt personally, but hadn't yet articulated themselves. This is what I mean by slime-free sales. It's a sales process that allows this dynamic to feel more like a flow state, feel more like a human connection, feels like the trading of profound insights back and forth, and ultimately that is so much different than manipulation. And the last thing I want to say is something that was very profound to me, because it was something that I had always felt but hadn't yet articulated cohesively. It's this idea that the goal of a sale, especially in slime-free sales, is not for the prospect to say yes, it's for the prospect to make a decision. The biggest failure in sales isn't that the prospect says no to you. Sometimes it's not the right time, sometimes it's not the right price. The biggest failure in sales isn't your prospect saying no. The biggest failure in sales is the prospect excessively deliberating, wandering around in no man's land, when they could have made a decision that would have made their life better. How long are you gonna wait in an area where your life is unideal, where you have this gap between where you are and where you wanna go, and there's someone to help, and you're not gonna take action on that? And so the goal of sales is to get serious and say, hey, here's your life, here's your problem, here's where you wanna go. I have a path to get us there. Would you like to make the decision on whether or not today is the day that you're gonna actually make a change and make this happen? Or do you want me to get lost so you can keep mulling it over in no man's land? Then the question becomes not how much is it costing you to sign on with me, the question is how much is it costing you to stay where you are? So for those of you who don't know or haven't heard my full story, I was a really competitive volleyball player back in the day. One of my best teammates and best friends ended up becoming the head coach of one of the most successful volleyball programs in North America. In volleyball, we always have this term, which is don't miss your serve. You know, when you serve the ball, just don't put it in the net, don't put it out of bounds, because you're just giving away a free point. And what happens to all of us volleyball players is we get so in our head about missing the serve that we aren't as confident as we could be, because all that's in our mind is don't make a useless error. My friend, when coaching one of the best programs in North America, had a really interesting idea. He said to his team, hey, we're going to miss serves, it's part of the game. I want you to serve so confidently and as good as you can that when the ball does make it over the net, it's almost impossible to return. The results were staggering. They became the best team in the league at the ace to error ratio. ratio. For every serve they would put in, they would get more points than they would lose. They were realistic about the fact that they were going to miss, and this allowed them to have internal peace over their process. And in that way, slime-free sales might seem like you're leaving a lot on the table. You're letting prospects walk away if they're not the right fit. You're putting yourself on the line. You're putting yourself out there vulnerably to have like a real conversation with somebody. And so slime-free sales won't ensure that you're going to close every deal. And being yourself and being the best you won't ensure you're going to close every deal, but it sure beats that stench of scarcity when someone really needs to close a deal and feels like it's their job to box somebody in and make a sale. And ultimately, 5 years from now, you're not going to want a book of clients who you forced into a sale. You're going to want a book of clients who jived with you when you were being yourself. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you got some value out of it. And if you did, make sure to hit those buttons. Hit like, hit subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more videos just like this one every single week. Until next time.